Oh, look, we had just about everything went wrong. We had the wrong tone. We had the wrong message. We had the wrong messenger. We didn't go out and recruit. We didn't go out and do outreach. We left it till the very last minute. It wasn't until practically the last couple of months after the convention that really the big push for the Latino vote began, and it was too late by then. The electorate had formed themselves an opinion of Governor Romney, and it was very hard to change it. I also think I think President Obama got off scot-free. At one point, he hadn't delivered on immigration and was very vulnerable on that issue. But we had a candidate who had dug himself into such a hole on immigration that he couldn't attack President Obama on it, and therefore he was left untouched on the issue where he was the most vulnerable. Latino voters aren't a one-issue electorate. No group of voters is. And that's, I think, the first thing we all have to understand, that Latino voters are just like every other American voter. We just happen to be of Hispanic descent. But we care about different things. We're not all homogeneous. We're not all painted with the same paintbrush. We have different interests, where we're from, where we live, our experiences. And so is changing the policy on immigration enough? No, and I'm not sure we have to change the policy. I think we have to come up with a bipartisan agreement, and that means that some of the very important things to Republicans, like border security, have to be part of it, but it also means finding a way to address the 11 million who are here undocumented. That has got to be a part of the solution. I think the tone is very important. Many Hispanics feel that the tone the Republicans have used in the past has gotten hostile, anti-immigrant, anti-Hispanic, and thus we shut our ears off to any other issue. If voters think you don't like them, they tend not to listen to you, regardless on what you're talking about. Immigration is not the most important issue for Latinos, but it is a litmus test issue. It is an issue of the heart. It is an emotional issue. We all know immigrants, people who've been here undocumented, people who are here undocumented now. And so it's so important that as this immigration debate moves forward, Republicans see it as an opportunity to rebuild bridges. Where shall I start? I think, I think, and I've said before, Mitt Romney lost this race in the primary. He self-deported from the White House. I think his biggest mistake was trying to paint himself as a very conservative person in the primaries and twisting himself into pretzel shapes to try to establish those conservative bona fides, which included going very far right, unnecessarily so, on the immigration issue, and saying some things that then he could not take back during the general. He was never willing to move to the center during the general. I think he suffered from flip-flop paranoia, acute flip-flop paranoia, and was therefore very hesitant to make a move to the center during the general, never did. And those statements he made in the primary formed an opinion. Hispanics knew very little about Mitt Romney before the primaries, and the little they came to know of him during the primaries, they certainly didn't like. There's not one thing that's enough. There's not one silver bullet to win any group of voters, whether we're talking African Americans or women or Hispanics or whites for that matter. It's still important to win white voters. But I think certainly getting rid of the immigration issue, which has been such a wedge issue, very effectively used by the Democrats to beat the Republicans over the head with, and which the Republicans have done themselves a lot of harm as well, a lot of self-inflicted injuries on that issue. If we could get rid of that issue, I feel confident that Republicans can then compete for the hearts and minds of Hispanic voters. Hispanics understand that, that it's not to our best interest to all be with one party. At that point, you get taken for granted by one and ignored by the other. That's not what Hispanics want. We want to be courted. And I think the Republicans can compete and win over some Hispanic vote once we get that huge wall, that wedge that's between us, that's just embodied in the immigration issue and the way that it's been discussed and talked about. Well, I have two horses so far in the race. I don't know which of the two is going to do it, but I certainly think Jeb Bush would be a tremendous candidate and a tremendous nominee. I think he would do incredible inroads. He'd be a game changer with the Hispanic vote vis-a-vis Republicans, because he's got such a long track record, because he has paid a political price, because he's been willing to take the risks, because he's not a Johnny-come-lately to the community or to the issues that are important for us. He won 56% of the Hispanic vote in Florida. He can do something tremendous if he were to run. I think Marco Rubio comes with it from a level of personal experience. He's got incredible eloquence. He can talk about his family's roots, his immigrant experience, the people he knows. I know Marco Rubio, and you have to walk a pretty long way from his house, from where he lives now, to run into somebody that is not an immigrant or a child of an immigrant. So I think, those are two. But I think we have a lot of good Republicans that are, that are going to do it, that realize not doing Hispanic outreach is no longer an option. It is a liability, and it is the toll of death, shall you not do it. I think any of the names that are being thrown around right now, well, not any of them, but most of them, would be far more aggressive towards getting the Hispanic vote, and also have the right tone, hopefully the right policy. I think, people like Susana Martinez bring in a tremendous perspective as well. You've got folks like Chris Christie. There's a lot of Hispanics in his state. I think he's got some understanding. Certainly Paul Ryan has a long history. He wasn't allowed to speak about it during the Romney campaign, but if it's a Ryan campaign, I think you'd see a completely different Paul Ryan in reaching out to Hispanics.